Hi, I'm Vicki from MeTime, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make these beautiful houses and ghosts from our Bootiful Neighborhood of September's Hoop Studio. If you are new to MeTime, we deliver complete machine embroidery experience right to your door. We have different subscriptions, so if you want to find more out about this, you can go to metimedeliver.com. We are calling it Bootiful Neighborhood because these houses are the first kit of a neighborhood that will grow over the years. So starting in September, you will get more houses and more buildings each year that you can add to your collection. Here's a photo that shows this month's kit contents. It includes shapeform interfacing, full color instructions, fabrics, envelope, and more. A few of my favorite parts are this adorable tombstone and chiffon. We're going to talk more about the chiffon in this month's Fresh Technique. Part 1 is embroidering the back of the house. I will briefly tell you some of these steps so we can focus on the more tricky parts. I have already pre-cut my fabrics, ironed them, and added fusible backing. I also hooped the light mesh cutaway stabilizer and stitched the house back placement line using the House 1 back embroidery file. Now I am on instruction step 5. Place the house back base shapeform interfacing, covering the placement line, and tape in place. Machine step 2 is stitch the house back base tack down line and scoring guides. You'll remove the tape now. Trim the shapeform very close to the tack down line, but be careful not to cut the stitch line or stabilizer. If you accidentally cut a little bit of stabilizer while trimming, don't worry, you can reinforce it with tape. On instruction step 8, we begin scoring. I want to give you a few tips on this. First, when scoring with a sharp seam ripper, pick out the stitches between the scoring guides. Second, on this part, we're trying to only cut through the shapeform, so make sure the ballpoint tip is down to avoid cutting the stabilizer. If you do accidentally cut through the stabilizer a little bit, remember that you can reinforce it with tape. Instructions step 9 to 14 are pretty simple. You will stitch the placement line, place the house back fabric covering the placement line, and stitch the tack down line. Then you can stitch the fence, bats, and back fold line. This brings us now to instruction step 15. Remove the project from the hoop and then trim all layers along the top and bottom 1/4 inch away from the tack down lines. On the left and right sides, trim along the tack down lines, but be careful not to cut the tack down line stitching. Cut the notches as shown on instruction step 17 along the peaks and corners as indicated. Glue the top and bottom edges of the back fabric to the top of the project. Fold these sections down and clip them in place while they dry. Whenever I use clips, I like to use extra scraps of shapeform so the clips don't leave a mark. This completes our part 1. Part 2 is embroidering the front of the house. The first 12 steps were very similar to part 1. So I already hooped the stabilizer, I loaded the file, stitched the placement lines, placed the shapeform, tacked it down, and trimmed the stabilizer the same way I did for part 1. Then I placed the fabric on top, tacked it down, and started stitching the embroidery designs. Instruction step 13 is where it's a little different from part 1 because we have windows on the front of the design. I am on machine step 7 and I'll stitch the window trimming line. For step 14, make sure your seam ripper is sharp and not dull. Carefully cut the fabric, shapeform, and stabilizer close to the window trimming lines without cutting the stitch lines. Fold the window chiffon piece in half widthwise, starch it, and press the chiffon well with a pressing cloth. The fresh technique for this kit is using chiffon. Chiffon is a lightweight, thin and fine fabric. This month, we're using 2 colors to line the windows of your embroidered houses. This house uses the white one. Because it's sheer, if you choose to add battery-operated lights inside of your houses, the light will shine through, adding a little more life to your house. On page 35 of your resource guide, you can find the most important tip for using chiffon, which needs to be starched and taped taut because it's lightweight. Be sure to tape all 4 sides and the corners in place. This will help to avoid bunching while stitching. There are also other tips you may find helpful for this project on page 35, like using glue to assemble the buildings. Okay, back to our instructions. We are in instruction step 16. Turn the hoop to the back. Place the chiffon completely covering the windows. Smooth it out, then tape all 4 edges and corners taut like we talked about. Sometimes tension can be off, so we like to match the bobbin to the threads in the instructions. It also gives us a nice clean edge on these windows. For instruction step 17, change the bobbin thread to match the top thread. Then stitch the window satin outlines and grids. For step 18, turn the hoop to the back. Remove the tape. Apply a fray preventative product a 1/4 inch away from the windows. And then trim the excess chiffon around a 1/4 inch away from the windows. Steps 19 to 27 are pretty straightforward. Stitch the fence and bats, the applique door, and add the door details, satin stitch, and fold line. Now that I have completed steps 19 to 27, I am on instruction step 28. Here, I'm going to do the same thing I did on the back of the house. Remove the project from the hoop, then trim all layers along the top and bottom a 1/4 inch away from the tack down lines. On the left and right sides, trim along the tack down lines. Be careful not to cut the tack down line stitching. Cut the notches as shown on instruction step 17 along the peaks and corners as indicated. Fold the top and bottom edges of the back fabric to the back of the project and glue these sections down and clip them in place while they dry. That completes part 2. Part 3 is embroidering the roof. The shape of this roof is really fun and unique. Start by folding the long edge of both eaves fabric pieces over 1/2 inch and press well. Step 2 to 7 are similar to parts 1 and 2. So I have already completed these by hooping the stabilizer, loading the file, stitching the placement line, placing the shape form, stitching the tack down line, and trimming the shape form close to the stitch line. Step 8 is scoring the roof. Scoring the roof is different from the houses because there are 3 score lines instead of 1. But you still score them the same way by unpicking any stitches between the scoring guides and then cutting through the shape form directly between the scoring guides. I completed steps 9 to 13, which are similar to the house front and back. Stitch the placement line, place and tape the roof fabric, stitch the tack down line, decorative lines, and roof lines. In order to have a nice clean edge on the roof, we will place fabric on the top and turn it. To do this, first, place both eave fabric pieces fold side up on top of the roof fabric, overlapping by at least 1/2 inch. Place tape along the edges and across the entire overlap so the presser foot does not snag. This is instruction step 14. Next, stitch the final outline and remove any tape. Remove the project from the hoop, trim all layers a 1/4 inch away from the final outline, and be sure not to cut the stitch line. Cut notches as shown in your instruction book on step 17. This is going to allow us to have nice corners and edges when we turn the roof. Turn the roof right side out by placing a thumb on each corner of eaves 1 and pushing through the opening. Repeat to push the corners of eaves 2. Carefully poke the corners with a blunt tip to make them square. Pull the fabric on the back of the project towards the middle until taut. Press well. This is the roof, set aside for assembly. Part 4 is assembling the house. Place the front and back of house 1 right sides together, aligning the bottom edges and the sewing guides. Clip the pieces in place as shown. Using a sewing machine, stitch the house sides together directly on the sewing guides. Be sure to backstitch at the beginning and end of stitching. Turn the house right side out by folding the house and pushing on both of the side seams to create space between the front and back pieces. Now, push one of the peaks down through the inside of the house. Then, pull the house peak through as far as it can go. Push the other peak down through the inside the house. Then, pull the second peak through to fully turn the house right side out. Using a pressing cloth, press all 4 corners of the house. Fold the roof in half, wrong sides together, and using a pressing cloth, press the roof. Hold the roof together until cool. Apply a small dot of fabric glue to the top edges of the house walls and where the overhanging parts of the roof will attach. If you're having trouble with the roof arc, add more clips to the curve. Make sure that the roof arc is toward the front of the house. Align the roof so that the seams of eaves 1 and eaves 2 run parallel to the left and right sides of the house. Hold the roof in place until the glue is set for about 8 to 10 minutes. That completes house 1. I love the unique shape of this house, all the little details and the windows. Before I end this video, I wanted to give you a tip for the other 2 projects. First, if you want to make the ghosts we attach to the house, you can find the instructions in your downloads. They are really simple to make. How you decide to attach them is up to you. If you want them to be permanently in one spot, you can use a tiny dot of glue. If you want to be able to move them, you can use double-sided tape or Velcro. If you want, you can make a lot of tiny little ghosts and make a little cute garland of Halloween ghosts. House 2 is created very similarly to House 1, but there is this cute little cat in the window. Because chiffon is delicate, we suggest slowing your machine down as much as you can while stitching the cat so it preserves your chiffon. Well, that's everything that I have for you today. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and please go ahead and share the houses that you make in our Me Time community. I would love to see what you create. So now go ahead and enjoy some well-deserved me time.